Church, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Last week, Lance did a really great job of just kind of talking about the importance of connecting to God. More importantly, how to connect other people to God. And he shared personal testimony and was really vulnerable, and I really appreciated everything that he shared. What he did and what he talked about will help make a lot of sense with what I'm about to share today, being able to put into practice what I'm about to share. So recently, me and a friend, we just had a conversation. We were talking about the power of God. And one of the things that he was talking about as we were having this conversation was how God is the only one that can make things right. The only one that can resolve some of the issues that we're experiencing today. As I left the conversation, something about that just didn't sit well with me. It was something about this notion that only God can fix the problems that we have going on today. So that begs the question, is it true? Is God the only source or the only one that can help with the issues that we're experiencing in this country, the issues that we're experiencing in this world? Let's dig into the scriptures and let's talk about it. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 14. We'll be reading verses 15 through 21. That evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy some food for themselves." But Jesus said, "That isn't necessary. You feed them." "But we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here," he said. Then he told the people to sit down on the grass, and Jesus took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish, looked up towards heaven and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to the disciples to distribute to all the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. About 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and children. So here we have a very familiar miracle, the feeding of the 5,000. There's been plenty of sermons, plenty of Bible talks, devotionals on this topic, but I wanted to touch on the component of this passage that may be a little unique, just to kind of give a new perspective. So here we have in this section, Jesus had just found out about his cousin, John the Baptist, being killed. So he's trying to kind of get his feelings and get his emotions and just get his thoughts together, kind of have some me time. But then this crowd of people found out that he was around, came to him in need of some help, desperate, just wanting to have that connection with them. So Jesus, being who he is, he preached to them, met their needs, healed the sick, and was there for them in a time where he actually needed the most to recover. But he saw that they needed some assistance and he was there for them. The disciples, as they were looking at Jesus and looking at their time clocks, so to speak, was like, "Hey, Jesus, it's getting late. And I'm getting hungry. We're getting hungry. So you need to tell his people to go off and go find something to eat." And Jesus, being who he is, said, "All right, if it's getting so late and you guys are so hungry, then why don't you go and feed the people?" Well, the disciples was recognizing that, I don't know how we're going to feed all these people. Jesus, if you hadn't noticed by now, we don't have a lot of money. We're actually broke. So how are you expecting us to feed all these people? So here's the question. Was God the only one that can meet the needs of the people? Or was the disciples truly capable of meeting the needs of the people? I would say the answer to that is yes. Well, I mentioned 2 different things, so how can the answer be yes? Well, here's what I got to say about that. So realistically, like logically, 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, it ain't gonna feed a lot of people. We go through that every day at the house. Our kids are eating us out of house and home. My son, God bless him, man, but he got an appetite. So that can't even feed my son, let alone trying to feed over 5,000 people. Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that that amount of food couldn't feed that many people. But what he was trying to do was He was trying to get the disciples to use what they have, to tap into him as a source, to try to magnify, to try to multiply what they had available. It reminds me of an amplifier. So let me describe what an amplifier is. An amplifier job is to turn a small electric current into a larger one. So there's tiny components in hearing aids that allow for someone's voice to be louder, amplified. Electric stereos have amplifiers in them that allows for the sound that comes out to have that bass. So we got some music connoisseurs in the church. My good friend Ron Michelle, he knows all about the bass because that's what he does for a living. He's a DJ. So he has amplifiers that allows for the sound, the music that come out of his stereo to be much louder. In other words, an amplifier takes something that's small and allows for it to be a lot larger. That's what Jesus was trying to get the disciples to see. Use him as the amplifier. Jesus acted as an amplifier for the disciples, and he can do the same thing with us. He can take the small resources that we have and magnify it to make it larger. As I start evaluating my life, there's moments where I think I just haven't done enough. I haven't used my resources, my talent to really help people, to allow Jesus to amplify what I have for the masses. And it bothers me when I think about that. The passage that I recall that reflects my feelings at times is this Good Samaritan. So let's turn to Luke chapter 10 and verse 30. And it says, a Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed the other side of the road and passed right by him. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed on the other side of the road. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. If I'm honest with you guys, I relate a lot more to the priest than anybody else in this passage. There's moments in my life where I realized that I could have done something for somebody. I could have helped them, but I was more concerned about if I was going to get sick or if I was going to get hurt in the process of helping them out. And there's a time a few years back that really reflects this thought of, I don't want to get too involved in a person's life because I might get hurt in the process. A few years back when I was working, there was an older woman that she had fallen on the ground. She was in an apartment at one of the communities that we own. And the manager came and rushed in and said, hey, this lady is on the ground. She's not breathing. We need to do something. So I went in there. He was trying to do CPR with her, but it wasn't working out very well. So I pushed him aside and I started doing chest compressions on her. You know, I'm praying and I'm pressing. But as I'm performing these chest compressions, I see that she's having some foam coming out of her mouth. And in that moment, I had to make a decision. Do I try to give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, or do I just pull back and just kind of keep doing the chest compressions? I didn't want to get sick. I didn't know what she had. I didn't know if what she had was, if she was dying from something, some illness. I didn't know. I was just afraid to touch her because I didn't want to get hurt in the process and I didn't want to get sick. So the paramedics came, they took over, they put the patches on her, the defibrillator, and they started doing chest compressions. And when I left the apartment, I was told that she didn't make it. She had passed away. And that crushed me because in that moment, I was more concerned about my safety, my comfort, and my sanitation versus possibly giving this lady the breath that could have saved her life. So I've been wrestling with that. Guys, I need you to pray on my behalf because that's something that really has hit home and I have a hard time getting over. And it reminds me of the priest and the Good Samaritan. So that's why I'm bringing this up, because there's moments in my life where I could have done more that I feel like I didn't. So here's my goal now. Try to do as much as I can to live a life of significance, to allow God to magnify the resources that I have. So now I've gotten a lot of exposure, and I'm involved in different organizations across the country. So when I got a chance to help somebody that's in need, to share the gospel with them, to share my life with them, to talk to them about Jesus, I'm trying to make the most of it, because I don't want to be in a situation where God has given me these tools and this platform and I don't do anything with it. My heart has changed. My mindset has changed about helping those that are in need. So here's something that you got to ask yourself. How does this look in your life? What person or group of people that you know that you can go out and try to meet their needs? How can you share your light in the process of meeting that need? These are the thoughts that should compel you to try to want to do more, but it's questions that we all need to ask ourselves. How can we do more with what God has given us? Sometimes in order to make a change, it only takes one person. One person to make a decision that I'm going to do something different than I have been doing for the past several years. Some of you may not agree with what I'm about to say, but I don't think God is in the business of unilaterally solving individual problems or trying to solve the world problems. Here's what I mean by that. We can't just throw our hands in the air and say, you know what, I don't have to do anything. God is in control. God will take care of it. Without us providing any effort, without us contributing anything as his sons and daughters of Jesus. I don't think that's the case. Here's what I mean by that. Let's turn to 2 Kings chapter 4, starting at verse 1. One day a widow of a member of the group of the prophets came to Elijah and cried out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come, threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves." "What can I do to help you?" Elijah asked. "Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Nothing at all, except a flask of olive oil," she replied. And Elijah said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go into the house with your sons and shut the door. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each aside when it is filled." So she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. "Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, "Now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." See, Elijah told this woman to take what she had, 1 jar of oil, and pour it out in faith that God will multiply or God will use it. I'm pretty sure Elijah could have did the work for her. I'm pretty sure he could have helped out by going to the neighbors and getting the oil, but he didn't. He told her to go out and do it, just like what Jesus did with the disciples. He made her do the work. He made her take the steps to increase her faith. Elijah's faith was already strong, but he needed her to get there. He needed her to grow. God didn't just make her problems go away. He didn't just snap his fingers and all her problems vanished. No, he wanted her faith to grow. He wanted her to put in the work. He wanted to amplify the little that she had, the resources of 1 jar of oil. And that's what he did. God can do the same thing with us. Let's tie this passage back to Matthew 14. Jesus told the disciples, "If you take what you have, 5 loaves, 2 fish, and trust in me, I will provide a way to take care of the needs of the people." So when I think about a person that has allowed Jesus to amplify their resources, the first person that comes to mind is Joe Anderson, the late Joe Anderson. She didn't have a lot. She had health issues, but she allowed God to use her resources to touch so many people all across the country because she recognized the need that people had, which was encouragement. So she would make these cards, she would make these notes, and she would send them out to folks. Me being a direct recipient of one of her encouragement notes, it has impacted my life for a very long time. That's a practical application of taking what you have, this small jar, and allowing God to magnify it, to amplify it. I've grown so much because of my interactions with Jo and her example. It really has made a difference. Far too often, when we see something that's not right, we tell ourselves, man, I hope somebody does something about that. I hope somebody steps in and fixes this problem or corrects this. And there's an image that I want to show of someone that had this mindset, that was willing to let somebody else, or hoping somebody else will solve a problem. The image that you're looking at right now is considered one of the most influential images of all time by the New York Times. And it's taken of a picture of a little girl in Africa that, from the looks of things, she was exhausted. She was actually dying. She was leaving her village to go to a feeding center just to try to find a meal. But during her journey, she just tapped out and was just on the ground. And this vulture looked at her as being dead meat. The journalist that captured that image was told that you shouldn't get involved in the local politics or the local issues. Stay away from that. Don't do nothing. And lo and behold, he didn't do anything. The only thing he did was take that picture. He took that image. He relied on somebody else to come and try to meet the needs of this little girl. That image was taken in 1993. A year later, that image received the Pulitzer Prize. This is the highest honor any photojournalist could ever receive. This guy was on cloud nine. He was living the high life because he was out there. He had made it. But a few months after him winning that award, he took his life. I think he took his life because he recognized that I should have done more. But the guilt of not stepping in, not even offering this little girl some food, not even picking her up and taking her to the feeding center himself. I think the guilt of him not doing anything and putting his hands up and leaving it to somebody else ate away at his soul. Let me tell you, as ambassadors of Jesus, we have the ability of tapping into him, to allowing Jesus to amplify our resources, to be able to meet the needs of the people, to be able to feed the people, just like what Jesus told the disciples to do. We can't miss out on moments to really get out there and help those that need help the most. And it doesn't mean that you just got to give people food. There's so many needs that, if it's emotionally, how can you meet that need? If it's financially, how can you meet that needs? If it's just relationally, how can you meet that needs? And more importantly, if it's spiritually, how can you meet the needs of the people? How can you feed the people? We can't miss this moment in time to feed the people. We got to make the most of our time because we don't know when our clock is going to stop. But Jesus is asking you to feed the people. Allow him to move in your life so that you can move in others' life. I'm so grateful that I'm a disciple of Jesus and now recognize that I can make a difference. As disciples of Jesus, you can do the same thing. You just got to let him. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you take heed in what God has in store for your life. Thank you.